Mais sinon, je commence. Hein. Ouais, ouais, ouais. Okay, well, I guess I'm gonna start. So thank you for coming. This presentation is going to be about an upcoming fork, which is called the Verge. So yeah, for all the French people in the room, I didn't pick that name. So what is the Verge? The Verge is, can I get that? Awesome, thank you. If that works, if it doesn't, it's okay. Right, so the Verge is the Verge is about changing the format that Ethereum stores its data in. And we want to switch from a structure called the Merkle-Patricia tree into a Verkle tree. So I've made many presentations about the structure of the tree. I did it ad nauseum, really. So I will only focus, for this presentation, I will only focus on how the fork happens, how the conversion happens from the MPT to the Verkle tree. You only need to know two things about this. The first one is the goal of this fork is to make blocks like self-contained execution units. So you get a block, you do not need anything like any prerequisite. You don't need to sync, you don't need to do anything like this. Well, you need to make sure, of course, the block belongs to the chain, but that's pretty much it. And the other thing you need to know is that in the current MPT, every value is accessible through a key, and the key is a hash of the address or of the slot number. We change the hash function, so we have to rehash everything. And that is the problem, because by the time the Verge happens, hopefully next year, there will be about 1 billion leaves in the tree. That's a lot of data. We cannot translate everything in one go. We can definitely not translate that in one slot. We're talking about days, if not months. So yeah, like the point I want to make is there's too much data. This change is very risky because it's effectively irreversible. We could, but there's no practical method to do this. So I'm going to present the new, like the method that is currently favored to execute this conversion, and it's called the overlay method. If you've seen some of my former presentations, you might have seen that I was at the time talking about another conversion method, but there's been some optimization work recently by myself, but more importantly by Ignacio Hagopian, that really improved the performance of Verkle tree execution and the overlay method. So now it's the favorite approach. And how does it work? Well, the idea is that you freeze the current MPT at a fork block, and you lay another tree, which is a Verkle tree, on top of that tree. And so every write goes into that new tree. And there's an extra twist. Every block we take n values from the tree, and we convert them, like we convert their keys, and we insert them in the overlay tree. And there's another difference with respect to maybe other forks. Normally, you have a fork. It happens at a given block height, or it happens at a given timestamp, and that's it. Now, because of the amount of data that needs to be translated, there's a lot of data, so we know what timestamp or what time or what height the fork starts, but we don't really know when the conversion ends, when the fork ends. So it depends on how much data is present in the tree at the time we start converting. So visually, how does that go? Yeah, I'm kind of in the way, so I'm going to present the structure of how it plays out. So you have the fork, you have the blocks, and we have a block that is currently just before the fork, and we have that thing here represents the current Merkle-Patricia tree at the height of the block. And every blue square in the tree represents a value that was written before the fork, so right now it's only blue squares. And the red, like M-like structure represents the internal nodes of the tree. And the last thing is this green arrow. It represents the head of the iterator because we're going to convert n values each time. And because we do this, we need to keep track of what has already been converted and what has not. It's getting more intimate, nice. So you start at the fork height. We start with a new block. Still trying to make some, to make sure everybody sees it. We start with a new tree. The tree is a Verkle tree. It's currently empty, but because it's Verkle, I used an inverted triangle to represent the root. And then we start executing transactions in the block. And because these are new writes, like either updates to the state or writes to value that did not exist, they go directly into the overlay tree, the top tree. And it's purple to note that those values were written after the fork. And then we have this translation process, this iterator sweep that goes over the values of the MPT. And here n equals 2, so we only convert 2 values that we move into the overlay tree, and the head of the iterator moves by 2. Then the question comes, what if we want to access data that is not present in the Verkle tree, but is present here in the MPT? Well, first we hit the Verkle tree to see if a newer value was not present. And if that value was not found, as is the case in this example, you have to hit the MPT and find that data there. Of course, if you don't find it, that means the data was never present in the state. So one point before we continue, that means that you need to read 2 trees instead of 1. There's going to be a consequence for that in terms of gas. Okay, after that, the process repeats. The iterator moves by 2 more leaves, and for whatever reason, this some value that was converted before got overwritten, so we have an extra purple square. And the interesting thing is, once the fork block has been finalized, we do not really need all the internal nodes, so they can be deleted, so we can save some space. It's not completely true, because those internal nodes are very useful for SnapSync, but in most likely, like, what we're gonna do is make it an option that needs to be willfully activated. So people who really need it will find that they need to activate this option to delete the data. Most people who never read the manual will keep serving that data, and that will be great. But of course, if you want to be, if you're a big operation and you want to make sure that you can still SnapSync during the conversion, you will have to make sure that you have your node that you can SnapSync from at any time. Anyway, so eventually the iterator sweep covers everything, and we can therefore delete the MPT because all the values that were in the MPT have been converted. So yeah, how does that fare? Not great. We have okay. So first of all, it's actually not true. This thing is a week old. We manage, especially Ignacio, has managed to make this much faster. But by the look of it, what we can see is that 10,000 leaves, it's manageable, but it comes at a cost. This is only a problem if you're going to full sync, because when you full sync, you have to do this n leaves conversion thing as you sync. So it probably adds 2 weeks to 1 month into a full sync, which is kind of crazy, but no matter the method you choose, you will have to do something similar. And the other thing is that, thankfully, it does not really affect block production. So if you're already following the chain, you have this, like the slot is split into 12 seconds, a slot is 12 seconds, but really everything needs to happen for 4 seconds. And then you have 8 seconds where it's kind of more idle. And you can use those 8 seconds to prepare, start converting the leaves for the next round. And that's actually, with 10,000 leaves on an average machine, you can do this conversion, this end block transfer in like 1 second. So as long as you can fit 1 second into 8 seconds, you don't really have a problem. Okay, no more response from the, okay. So what timelines are we looking at? Well, if we choose to transfer 1,000 leaves, it's going to take 6 months. It's quite long. If we pick 10,000, it's only going to be 15 days, so that's much more acceptable. But why not try to, why not bite the bullet and translate 1,000 leaves in one go? Well, the problem is that there's a trade-off. The more leaves we transfer, while still trying to follow the chain, like if you get over those 8 seconds, you will fall behind. And the question is, how fast is your machine? Can your machine indeed translate, for example, 10K in 8 seconds and you still have a bit of slack in case something goes wrong? We see that some machines, like I will talk about this the next slide, but some machines have a hard time following. Others, have no problem. So we have this in this model here. We have the blue line here that represents the target of 1 month, and it tells you how many leaves you need to translate per block, given the amount of nodes that drop off the network, and still make the target of 1 month. So basically, if you're above the blue line, everything is fine. You will hit 1 month. If you're under the blue line, it's getting less likely. What I mean is, this is for. So what we see is, for example, the 5K line, which is the red line, will tell you that we can still reach the target if we lose about 5-10% of the nodes. And if we translate 10,000 leaves per block, we can still hit the target with half the network. Of course, this is just how you hit the target. If you start losing half the nodes on the network, it's not going to go well. So the current results, on a reasonably old AMD 64 machine, we get, we can handle 10K. That's not a problem. The problem comes with the ROG 5B and all those cheap ARM machines. We got some optimizations like recently, as in yesterday, that seem to point out that 5,000 leaves per block is possible. But yeah, we want to make sure before we go, we say, okay, it's 5K, and everybody has to accept that. When the conversion is over, you see this message: the elephant has landed. So what's the connection with this presentation? Absolutely none. It's just that we are in the process of selecting our spirit animal. Every fork has its spirit animal. I'm just campaigning for the elephant. But so when it comes coming back to the method, it's like here are the great advantage is that whatever code you write for this transition can be reused in sync. More importantly, what happens is that all this conversion happens inside the consensus. So if we are doing if one of the clients has a bug, it will immediately appear. There will be a chain split. We can intervene and fix it. A lot of other methods don't have this property. And also quite important, in case you find a bug, you can, because it's part of the consensus, you can interrupt the conversion, upgrade your client, and resume it, and it should reorg and continue the conversion. And all the code that has been written will be reused. It's not like code we write once and forget, and have to maintain even though we never use it again. And the problem, if we look at the drawbacks of this approach, it might be that some low power machines will drop off the network. So if you are a home staker with a ROG 5B, we're trying to make it work, but we can't promise it at this time. And because I was saying the full sync is going to be a bit slower, if you have to interrupt and you have to rejoin, it might take longer than it normally does. It's not great, but it's manageable. And the last point that I already touched upon is the gas. We have this period in which to read some data, you potentially read 2 trees. Like you go to the Verkle tree, and then you go to the next tree. The problem with this is that we have to double the price of the gas, otherwise something gets subsidized and can be attacked. So what we can do with this approach, if it's short enough, we can say, well, too bad. For a month, the gas, like the cost of a read, is going to be double what it currently is. Too bad. Yeah, it's a pain, but that's how it is. So we can have a simple solution, like hand-wavy solution. If it's longer than this, we're going to have to find something better, and I'll get back to this later. But that's not good news. So were there other options? Yes, that we looked at. One of them is called the offline conversion. That was the previously favored option that Giulio here, excuse me, worked on. So, congrats. And what happens in that case is that instead of one fork, you really have two. You have you have to decide when you start converting, because even though the conversion itself is done outside of protocol by some very powerful nodes, everybody has to agree for some reasons I don't have time to explain. And then you have another fork, which is when really Verkle trees come into existence, or official existence. So what happens is you have two chains. One of them is going to be stopped for conversion, and the other one is going to follow and try to go through the fork. So at the conversion height, the chain on the left stops and starts converting the data in bulk, while the other chain continues. And then when the conversion ends, we have a Verkle state, that is a translation of the other, but it's kind of a counterfactual history. So there's a few forks that were not activated. So it's a bit of a weird state, and it's a source of a lot of bugs. And then, so when the data has been downloaded by everybody else on the network, they replay the blocks to make it to catch up with the head, and they have to do this before they reach the actual fork height, because when that happens, the Verkle tree chain becomes the official one. So even though it's been kind of like there's been some kind of cheating, like there's been a translation that is not really really kosher, we have to continue with this, and we give up, like with the MPT chain dies out. So, of course, there's a lot of problems with this approach. One of them is you start downloading the data. Yeah, I don't know if you guys can read. It's a bit difficult, but you have to download 600 gigabytes of data. For example, you start replaying blocks past the finalization point, and then someone tells you, "Oh, by the way, I converted. I stole all your bored apes or whatever." What do? Either, if it's just the apes, I would say, too bad. We find a social way to compensate for the mishap. If all the funds of everybody have been stolen, we have a problem, and we probably have to make a very painful manual reorg, and everything in between is basically DAO hack style. Social fork, like this is a situation we don't want to be in, basically. And the other problem is indeed that all the code that gets written, it's written once, and then we need to invent a new sync. We need to create special code again. So, given how much time I have, I'm going to skip on this one, but basically it's the same thing, except everybody does their own offline translation, so it's the worst of both worlds. And I'll finish with the state expiry. And the state expiry, it's exactly like the overlay tree, but you don't translate any leaves during the block. So you keep the MPT forever, well, supposedly forever, until hopefully someone in the future comes up with a plan to implement state expiry, at which point you forget about the MPT, and if someone needs something that was in that MPT, they need to implement that, they need to provide some proof that it was there. But like I said, this protocol, this feature does not exist yet, so we're basically kicking the can down the road. And like I was saying, there's the problem that if it's for a month, we've had months where gas was expensive. So if the storage price is twice as expensive for a month, it's okay. I mean, it's not great, but it's okay. If it's for potentially 2 years with no, or even more, like if there's no end in sight, we definitely we need to make something that is a bit more fair. So that means we need to make sure that if you hit the Verkle tree, you only pay the price for the Verkle tree. If you hit the MPT on top of that, you need to pay more. But that means that the gas accounting layer and the tree layer need to be integrated more tightly. And that is going to be an implementation nightmare. So that would basically be the doom of this method, I think. And with this, I will invite you to visit verkle.info. And I think we do have some time for questions.
I can only do like 2 questions.
So with the overlay method you presented first, that is your favorite one for now, unless you turn on the specific flag you mentioned, we would have to keep the entire Verkle partition tree until the translation is over, and when the elephant finally lands, we would drop this entire Verkle partition tree just in one epoch, basically, one slot?
Well, no, probably not in one slot, because that would kill the database performance. But it will, yeah, there will be some cleanup process.
Okay, my question was about the cleanup process affecting the node, basically.
Well, I mean, it's not actually that hard, because I guess we could just delete the entire directory. Yeah. I'm gonna say probably not, but that's still an open question, I guess.
Yeah. Did you consider to use ZK tools for the synchronization, because you would have a logarithmic time of verification of the node?
Yeah.
A main node could do the proof, and then the verifying node just synchronized by verifying the proof in logarithmic time, which would solve the fact that, okay, one node could perform it, and the other just...
Yeah, absolutely. So did we consider using ZK tools yet? Absolutely. There are a few problems with this. The first problem is that the current MPT is Ketchak. It's a horrible... Right. Okay, no, maybe I misunderstood. You have to switch? Right. But you still need to prove the source, to prove that the result is correct. So that's the first thing. And basically the whole point of Verkle tree is to make the tree Verkle friendly. Sorry, ZK friendly. But because we don't have the translation yet, that would kind of, if we made that translation, if we wrote that proof, might as well make it ZK directly. Not bother with the Verkle tree. Okay, that's it. Well, thanks.
Thank you.